Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Breachside Broadcast, home of the finest voxcasting either side of the breach. On today's episode, we continue the story of Damian Ravencroft and his quest for knowledge that will help him fight the Burning Man. Meanwhile, the Guild is mustering its forces and preparing for battle as the story comes to a head. I hope you enjoy part 5 of Madness of Malifaux, right after this word from our sponsor.
This episode of the Breachside Broadcast is once again brought to you by the Library of All Things. The library contains the information you want, the information you need, information you won't find anywhere else in Malifaux. Library patrons should be warned that the stacks are dangerous places and the library does not take kindly to intruders. Overdue books will be subject to additional charges and repeat offenders may never be heard from again.
The letters started 2 months earlier, around the time the Burning Man appeared in the skies over Malifaux. Damian didn't think there was any connection, but he'd taken the proper precautions nonetheless. The correspondent never indicated who they were, nor why they were writing. The contents of the letters, if authentic, were irresistible. The first had been a copy of a treatise on portal magic that predated anything Damian had ever seen. It suggested an entirely different approach to the matter, and a school of thought that was completely foreign to modern thinking. It must have been a copy, because the edges of the paper were fresh, but the page started mid-sentence, and ended just as the theorem got interesting. Damian spent weeks trying to track down the source document, to no avail. Just as he was about to give up, the second letter had arrived. A copy of the book's title page, and a fragment from a second book. This time from the personal diaries of Sandeep Desai, griping about Ramos and his meddling. Who had access to this sort of documentation? And why were they sending copies to Damian Ravencroft? It was a puzzle. Exactly the sort of puzzle Damian couldn't resist. Over the months, the letters got stranger and more frequent. Pages of poetry written in an infernal hand. Receipts from a drugstore in Malifaux during the first breach. A highly inaccurate history of fish, written from the perspective of a fishmonger. And occasionally, tantalizingly, pages from books of magic that Damian had never heard of, detailing rituals and knowledge that were apparently lost to the world, or yet to be discovered. Damian yearned for these books. He craved them. And one day, he was offered access. No price asked, no conditions given. A brief visit to the Library of All Things, if he followed his instructions carefully, waited patiently, and showed up when he was called. Tonight was that appointment. Damian would not be late. "So who are we meeting?" Belle asked. She kept a constant watch as they hurried through the streets, which was a good thing. Damian's attention was entirely on their destination. An elephant could have been trailing them, and he wouldn't have noticed. "I have no idea," he said. "But if they have what they promised, they could be the Governor General or the Demon King for all I care." "Please tell me you're joking," Belle said. When Damian didn't answer, she grabbed his shoulder and pulled him around. "You don't know where we're going or who we're meeting when we get there?" "Correct." "So this is a trap?" Belle unholstered her revolver and checked the cylinder for the 100th time that evening. "Obviously it's a trap." "Perhaps. But that's a risk I'm willing to take," Damian said, then set off down the street again. The prescribed hour approached, and he refused to risk missing this opportunity. Eventually Damian pulled up short. peering again at the slip of paper in his hand. "This is the address, but I don't see a door. Do you?" They were on a quiet street corner near Dockside, between a fishmonger's shuttered storefront and the entrance to a warehouse. Pools of stagnant water stood on the cobbles, and the air smelled like rotten fish. Hardly the place for a secret library. "No, because it's obviously a trap," Belle said. She strode to the end of the lane, looking around the corner, then returned, revolver still in hand. "We give it 5 minutes, then I'm getting you out of here." "We wait as long as we have to wait," Damian said. "We're probably being watched right now. Whoever was sending those letters is obviously very careful and very—" The wall next to the fishmonger's shuttered and split. Damian whirled to face it, sword in both hands, while Belle dove to the ground. The wall slid to the side, revealing a dark space that could not possibly have fit next to the shop without violating several laws of physics. There was a moment of silence. A short figure emerged from the shadows. "Heavens, what is that smell? Oh, it's like Mishu left her sushi rolls in the sun, then tried to burn the evidence." An elderly woman, neatly dressed in a voluminous kimono and carrying a brass lantern overhead, peered at Damian. "The esteemed Mr. Ravencroft, I presume?" "Madam," Damian said, recovering his composure. "It's good to finally meet you face to face. Do you know my associate?" Yes, introductions later." The old woman stepped aside and waved them in. "Please get inside before it stinks the place up." "She's a charmer," Belle muttered, as she hauled herself back to her feet. Damian waited until she was inside, then followed the former witch hunter through the hidden door. Damian's skin prickled as he passed inside. He sensed great magic plucking at him, and a change of space underfoot. His runes dampened magic, but a place like this couldn't be suppressed. It gave him a slight sense of vertigo, or maybe that was just the architecture. They stood on the ledge of a terraced canyon, crossed by arching bridges that floated without support through the air, winding away in both directions as far as the eye could see. Except this wasn't mere terrain. Dome ceilings painted in complicated murals dimpled a vaulting ceiling. Chandeliers hung overhead, their wide arms supporting flickering candles that cast an uneven light over everything, like the constellations of an alien sky. The floors and walls of the canyon were made of wood, or copper, or steel, and instead of cliff faces or boulders, every inch of space was covered in bookshelves. And on those shelves was the most incredible collection of books that Damian had ever seen. "Blessed be," Damian whispered. It's incredible." Gently, as though he feared harming it, Damian reached out and took a book from the nearest shelf. A thin cover, bound in worn fabric, emblazoned with geometric lines. As the spine cracked open, Damian was surprised to see that the pages were blank. After a moment, though, the delicate parchment filled with words and complex diagrams for early magical theory. Vellum, not paper. Are these handwritten notes in the margins? Had this been a specific person's journal, part of a private collection? The door slid shut behind them. Damian tore his eyes from the book to see that the way out was another pair of bookcases. When they were done rumbling together, the old woman reached up and replaced a particular book. Damian crooked his brows. "The key to the secret door is a book. Really?" "The obvious tricks are sometimes the best," she answered with a shrug. "Besides, it's a different book each time. Takes years to figure out the pattern. Fortunately for you, I've had the time to practice, or we might be trapped in here for the rest of our lives." "I can think of worse fates," Damian said, casting his eyes back across the canyon of books. "Years, you say? So you must be some kind of librarian." Yes, your precious introductions. I am Mia Murakami, eldest librarian in the employ of the 10 Thunders." "You replaced old Haru, eh? So why are you doing this, letting me in here?" Damian replaced the thin volume on the shelf and ran his fingers across the spines. Surely a Oyabun would want to protect its secrets. I would never betray the Oyabun's trust. The portion of the library concerned with the secrets of the kingdom have been sealed away. Mia shuffled to a small desk set into the stacks, setting down her lantern and a heavy-looking satchel. As for my reasons, well, I believe I will keep those to myself for now. You are looking for a way to combat the Burning Man. Our interests converge, if not our reasons. Fair enough. I can respect obscure motives. Damian cracked his back, peering out across the library. I should have brought some food. It's going to take most of the night to... We don't have most of the night, Mia said. 20 minutes, maybe 30. There is another guardian in the library tonight. She cannot know that we are here. Damian's heart sank. One look down the aisle showed thousands, if not tens of thousands of books. It isn't enough. Going through one shelf alone could take days, and there's no guarantee that information will be accurate. Cross-references and translations, finding the minute details I need to understand why the Burning Man is what it is. I can't change that, Maya said. But this is not an ordinary collection of books. The library of all things can sense what you want, what you need, and it will provide it for you. The sources will be authentic. Focus. Think of the subject you wish to research, and the library will provide. Interesting. Anything at all? Damian turned back to the shelf. His hand hovered over the black spine of a large book, its pages yellowed and frayed. What would it contain? What did he want to know most? What did he need to know? Damian had come here to research the Burning Man, but now that he understood the potential of the place, other thoughts floated through his mind. The yellow crypt and the runes burned into his flesh? The true source of the Neverborn? But no, it was the Burning Man that drove him here. Making up his mind, Damian pulled the volume and let it fall open. At first he was disappointed. Flipping pages, he saw familiar maps, dates that he knew by heart, names of men and women who had died long ago. This was a history of the Black Powder Wars. What could this have to do with... A map of Europe filled the page in front of him. As he watched, the thin black lines hissed and spat, then suddenly caught flame. He startled back, and Mia made a horrified sound. But before either of them could do anything, the flames died. New lines appeared into the map, their edges grey with ash. Cinders crawled through the words on the page like worms through rotting flesh, writing a new story on the pages of history. The flames were writing a new history, a new story, one seared into the fabric of time by the Burning Man. Damian smiled. Lynn blew across the page, letting the ink dry for a few seconds before closing her notebook. There was no question that the Burning Man was changing the library. Did that mean history itself was changing? That her own memories were untrustworthy? Or simply that the stories recorded in the library were being altered? History was written by the winners after all. Perhaps the Burning Man was setting things right. Or alight. In any case, Lynn couldn't continue tonight. Her eyes were getting blurry, and she was yawning more than she was writing. Besides, the library seemed hesitant to share more of what it knew. Hesitant was the wrong word. Confused, maybe? Every time she found a thread of altered history and tried to chase it, Lynn ran into a path of branching forks, as though the past existed both with and without the Burning Man's corrupting influence. Lynn's head was spinning with misplaced dates and contradictory spells. Hopefully things would be clearer in the morning. She capped the pen and ink pot, then tucked them together with a notebook into her satchel. As she stretched the kinks out of her neck, she noticed the booklight that had accompanied her was acting strangely. It sat at the end of the aisle, hunched over against a bookshelf with its head poking around the corner. Its glow, previously bright and energetic, had dimmed to a bare flicker. "Something wrong?" she asked. The spirit didn't respond, so she edged closer to it. As she approached, she could hear the booklight chittering quietly to itself. "Hey, is something bothering you?" The booklight glanced back at her. Its usually bulbous eyes were narrowed to a malevolent slant. Lynn was taken aback. She'd never known the booklights to be anything other than playful or curious. She crept to the corner and stuck her head around the shelf. A corridor of archways stretched into the distance. The walls of the corridor bent inward, like the mirrors in a funhouse, giving Lynn the impression of great distance. She had heard of passageways like this. They connected distant parts of the library, allowing for quick travel between the stacks. Such corridors shifted and moved, never leading to or from the same place twice, but always guiding the traveler to the place they needed to go. Or swallowing them whole, never to be seen again. Lynn rummaged through her satchel, eventually producing the ceremonial wakizashi the Oyabun had given her when she'd been raised a head librarian. Most of the time it sat on her desk, or the bottom of her bag forgotten. But somehow, staring down that impossibly long corridor, Lynn decided she would feel better holding the tiny blade in her hands. Heroes do brave things. Heroes do brave things. Heroes do... She kept repeating it to herself, as she crept down the hall. She could feel great distances passing with each step. Like she was falling forward, barely catching herself from tumbling into the abyss at each footfall. The booklight, still dim and malevolent, followed her close behind. Hushed conversation and shuffling followed. Belle slumped against one of the stacks, flipping through books and marking passages on magic and theory. Damian paced through the aisles, pulling tomes and stacking them next to the former witch hunter, giving brief instructions. Mia didn't have the energy to keep up with them. She'd pulled out her portable desk and was frantically copying the passages Belle indicated onto fresh parchment. Eventually Damian came to loom over her. "Wouldn't it be better if I just take them with me, to copy at my leisure?" he asked impatiently. "The library would never allow it. Anyone who takes a book from this place will be banished from it forever." Mia dropped a line of floating letters onto an empty page, not taking the time to straighten them out. They fell like half-cooked noodles onto the notebook. "Do you want to risk that?" "No, of course not. But there's so much here, so much I can..." A deep boom sounded through the stacks, accompanied by a shower of dust from the rafters. All three of them turned to look toward the source. What was that? "The library is aware of us. It's a jealous host. We're running out of time." Mia looked at the stack that still remained to copy, and the pile of books Belle was still sifting through. "3 more passages, Mr. Ravencroft. Then we must leave." "Or what?" the mage pressed. "What might happen?" "If Lynn notices the changes in the library, she may grow curious." "I can't afford that." Damian grimaced, then cast an eye over the remaining books. "Very well. These 2 on the history of rituals, and..." He grabbed a dusty tome out of Belle's hands. "This. Leave out the maps." "You ask much," Mia said. "Nothing less than what you offered, Miss Murakami." When Mia didn't react immediately, Damian arched his eyebrows. "I thought we were in a hurry." Mia sighed and took the book, paging through to the section Damian had marked. Damian turned away from the librarian, hiding the smile that was fighting its way to his lips. These books didn't matter. They were copies of originals he'd seen elsewhere, but it would take the old lady time to transcribe. Time was all he needed, because there were 2 things that Damian knew for certain. He would never get an opportunity like this ever again, and there was no way he was leaving until he had what he'd really come for. The secret that had driven Ramos to prison. The power that forced the burning man between realities and through time. And the forces that even the Neverborn feared. The truth behind the tyrants. Those who were dead, those who had slipped free, and those who remained imprisoned. Let's see if this works, Damian muttered to himself. He stepped around the corner, then closed his eyes and focused. Filling his mind with what little he knew about the tyrants, he walked forward, hands out, listening to the library of all things creak and shift around him. Hopefully, I can find my way back, he thought. When he opened his eyes, he was surrounded by darkness. The soft glow of Mia's lamp flickered in the distance, but there was no other light. He fumbled across the bookcase in front of him, feeling spines in the rough edges of cardboard covers, bound in leather and linen and other softer materials. Finally, his fingers touched something else. A spark of power went through him, threatening to overwhelm even his considerable defenses. He pulled the book free from the shelf and peered at it. In the dim and distant glow of the lantern, all he was able to make out was the title. Witness the End. Without a second thought, Damian slipped the book into his pocket. No sooner was it gone than Mia appeared behind him, lantern in hand. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Getting lost in books," Damian replied with a smile. "Easy enough to do, don't you think? Are you done with those copies?" Mia glared at him for a long moment, then swung the lantern back the way she'd come. "It's time to go." "Of course, whatever you say." Damian followed Mia back to where they'd been sitting. Belle stood next to the hidden door, a worried look on her face. "Not to worry, Belle." "You disappeared," she said. "I couldn't sense you at all." "Not to worry. I'm right here." Mia snorted and pulled the book key, triggering the door. Belle clutched the sheaf of loose paper containing the copied passages. She couldn't get free of the library quickly enough. Damian followed close behind. Once they were back in the street, he turned to Mia. "You have my eternal thanks, Miss Murakami. I hope I'm able to return the favor someday." "Count on it," Mia said, then closed the door. As it slid shut, Damian felt an incredible tension drain from his shoulders. "Somehow I don't think we'll be meeting her again," he said, fingers resting on the book in his pocket. The courtyard of the Guild Enclave was a hive of activity. Soldiers in red coats spilled out of the barracks to rank up in front of their divisional commanders, while mechanics and engineers swarmed over column after column of automata under Charles Hoffman's steady gaze. A few lines down, grids of witch hunters paced like caged tigers, attended by the silent cadre of their stalkers. Dashiell Barker ran a whetstone down the edge of his axe, then snorted at the disarray of the hunters. The guard wasn't perfect, but there was something reassuring about the mass of troops and the efficiency with which its men and women moved to protect the Guild's great machine. Hoffman and Crid would get the glory, but it was Dashiell and his guard who would do the hard work of keeping Malifaux safe. "Same as always," he muttered to himself. "And Sonia isn't even around to keep her people organized. Probably off setting something important on fire." "I assume you're talking about me." Dashiell startled to attention and whirled around. Sonia Crid marched towards him, descending the charred front steps of the Enclave. Waves of heat washed off the mage. "You have a problem with the way my troops conduct themselves, Barker." "Not at all, Crid," Dashiell said. "You got any idea what this is about?" "Word arrived from someone at the Explorers Society about 10 minutes ago," Crid said, running one finger down the shiny face of the mask at her hip. "Maxine has plotted the Burning Man's next appearance. Right here in Malifaux City." "We trust that lunatic?" Dashiell asked. "Doesn't feel like we have a lot of choice," Sonia grimaced, and shoved her hands into her pockets, surveying the teeming mass of Guild troops gathering in the courtyard. Best hope she's right, or we're going to be leaving our ass hanging in the breeze. I don't see Lady Jade, Dashel said. Can't imagine she'd want to miss this. Still tracking down Reva. The necromancer and her lackeys are on the move. Crid stuck her chin towards the stables, where Tal and his cohort had taken up residence. The former Imperials were rolling out their machinery with all the coordination of a parade of cats. What do you know about this lot? They're loud. They're dangerous. But they're the saviors of Vienna. Dashel rolled his eyes. Long as they don't put any of that iron on my boys, they're fine with me. Sonia, I'm glad I caught up to you. The Governor-General's pet analyst, Collins, lumbered across the courtyard. Mr. Marlowe has special instructions for you. Here comes the glory, Dashel said with a smirk. Crid ignored him, and she took a sheet of folded paper from Collins. She read it, squinted, then read it again. Is he out of his living mind? She snapped. How does he expect me to... The details don't concern me, Collins said. Just see that you follow orders. The lanky man marched away, disappearing into the crowd. Dashel crooked his brow at Sonia. She was seething, literally. No fire. The fool thinks I'm going to burn the city down. She crumpled up the paper and threw it away. Too many flames, he says, and with the cultists, it's ridiculous. The saying is fight fire with fire, isn't it? Dashel said with a smile, that he quickly extinguished when Crid rounded on him. I mean, I see your point. Handicapping your best asset, Mom. It's a damn shame. Oi, how's everybody doing? Tull's boisterous laugh boomed across the courtyard. The gunners' columns marched toward the front gate, all dark uniforms and gleaming gunmetal. The commander perched atop one of the walking artillery pieces, apparently perfectly comfortable swaying with the monstrosity's lurching gait. He had a steaming mug of tea in one hand, and clung to the rim of the cannon barrel with the other. The troops that surrounded him marched with the military precision of an overturned apple cart. Is that how they teach you to march in the King's army, Tull? Dashel asked. I've seen better formations from the Rezzers. The other man waved off the comment, draining his tea before clambering down the cannon and strolling over to where Dashel stood. Straight lines aren't worth jack once the shooting starts, and that's the part they pay me for, the shooting. At least they're all in uniform, makes it easier for my boys to steer clear of you. Speaking of uniforms, do we all get shiny masks? Tull asked, nodding at Sonia's hip. Or is it just something for the GG's favourites? Dashel cleared his throat and backed away. Tull's attention was already elsewhere, yelling at a squad of jetpack-equipped buffoons who kept triggering each other's packs for fun. When he turned around, Crid had closed the distance between them, one white-knuckled hand on the hilt of her sword. Would you like me to get you a mask, Tull? She grated. I can make it necessary. Whoa, I didn't... Tull stumbled back. Just then, Dashel stepped in and put a hand on Sonia's shoulder. The big man winced at the heat, but he managed to pull her back. He didn't mean anything, Crid. We have bigger problems. Yeah, right, sorry I said anything, just making conversation. Tull wiped some sweat from his brow and smiled. Didn't know it was a sore subject. Enough playing around, people, Hoffman shouted from the front gate. He was already leading his legion of machines out to the designated intercept point. Save the fight for the Colt. Crid grimaced, then spun away and marched back to her hunters, barking orders and spitting curses. Tull and Dashel watched her go. Spicy one, that, Tull said. She's seeing anyone? Dashel just shook his head and moved to the front of the column of guard. He swung his axe off his shoulder and ran a thumb along the edge, razor sharp. Let's move out, he bellowed, and the guard moved as one toward the battle. He did not know that they called him. He could never know he was the source of words that twisted reality and set it aflame when spoken aloud. His passing influence fed thousands of tiny pilot lights, all calling out into the night, frantically searching for acceptance. They wanted nothing more than to be consumed, to join the greatest force any world had ever seen, to behold the icon of their worship paint the heavens in glorious fire once more. They called him, and he answered. He felt a snap of tension when he made the journey, pulled back to the place of his birth on white-hot strings. Birth? No. Creation. Crossing the ether, its thick fluids of time and magic sealing his entire body. And every time it felt like drowning, being torn apart and pieced back together by the whims of reality and fate. There were never any screams. The Burning Man forgot what screaming was, what everything was. First, the blistering, the ether's outer layer recoiling from his presence. Then, reality's laws melting away. The fabric of reality was a photograph put to the flame. Its image remained constant, growing more unrecognizable with each second it endured the heat, until it bubbled and warped and ran liquid down the face of time. A chorus of wayward minds sang to him, their spells helping set new fires. Each grew into a portal, ringed in flame, that the Burning Man realized was himself. He lingered for infinity, for endless seconds, forced to watch, as he slowly approached the gate between worlds. All he had to do was touch one, and he would be reborn. The hearth was cold as a grave. Not that they needed warmth. The two women gathered in the tiny hut. Zoraida huddled under a worn blanket, her bony hands working a pair of bone-white knitting needles. The steady click-clack of her work filled the hut, like the beating of a clockwork heart. Across from her, Jedsa sat in an old rocking chair, the stained cloth of her burial shawl pulled tight against her face. A voodoo doll lay in Jedsa's lap, full of pins and incantations. The two women worked in silence. Moths dangled from every surface, opening and closing their soft wings in time with Zoraida's needles. A seam of bright sparks erupted in the dead ashes of the hearth. It crawled in dazzling patterns over the coals of yesterday's fire, growing and glowing brighter until it erupted in flames. Those moths unfortunate enough to be nesting in the flue burst into flames, flying like fat sparks around the room before collapsing into ash. Zoraida spared the sudden flame a brief glance. Jedsa didn't even move. "He's back," she said. "Yup," Zoraida agreed through gritted teeth, splitting her little knitting project in two.
That's it for another episode of the Breachside Broadcast. Join us next time for the continuation of Madness of Malifaux.